You're not as strong as you think. Nietzsche breaks the illusion. You think you're strong because you've endured, because you've survived, because you've held yourself together in a world that wanted you broken. But Nietzsche would look you in the eye and ask, is that strength or is it fear wearing armor? What if the strength you've clung to is just another illusion, forged not in freedom but in survival? Real strength, Nietzsche believed, is not endurance. It's not control. It's not the mask you wear to seem unshaken. Real strength is terrifying because it requires you to break, to descend, to lose yourself completely and rise again from the ashes, rebuilt by your own fire. Most people never do it. They confuse numbness for resilience, stoicism for sovereignty. This is the final episode in our 7-part Nietzschean descent. And in this last chapter, we go to the core of your identity, the illusion of strength itself. If you're ready to tear off the armor, to question everything you've called power, and to step into something real, like subscribe, activate the bell. Because this is not the end, it's the beginning of your true becoming. Illusion 1: endurance is not strength. It might be fear. You've been praised for how much you can endure, how much you can carry, how long you can survive without falling apart. But Nietzsche would challenge that admiration. He'd ask, is your endurance a sign of power or proof that you've forgotten how to live? We confuse survival with strength. We tell ourselves we're strong because we don't cry, because we don't complain, because we don't stop. But real strength isn't about how much pain you can bury. It's about how willing you are to face it, feel it, transform it. Endurance, when it becomes a lifestyle, can be a form of self-abandonment, a refusal to rest, a refusal to question, a refusal to heal. You keep pushing not because you're powerful, but because you're terrified of what will surface when you finally slow down. Nietzsche called this kind of false strength slave morality, the kind that praises suffering as virtue, that turns submission into sainthood, that tells you the more you tolerate, the more righteous you are. But he didn't see virtue in silent suffering, he saw avoidance. Endurance is easy when you shut off your heart, when you stop expecting joy, when you accept numbness as normal. But that's not strength. That's collapse in slow motion, disguised as discipline. True strength isn't silent. It roars, it weeps, it breaks, and then chooses to rise, not out of habit, but from a place of deep self-ownership. Nietzsche believed that real power starts when the mask of endurance is shattered, and the soul underneath is finally seen. This doesn't mean you should stop fighting. It means you should ask, why am I fighting? For what? For whom? And at what cost? Because if your strength is rooted in fear, it will betray you the moment life demands something real. Your body remembers every time you chose survival over truth, every time you smiled when you wanted to scream, every time you stayed when you wanted to leave. That's not resilience. That's self-erasure. Nietzsche didn't want you to endure. He wanted you to transform, to use your pain not as a badge but as a furnace, to turn endurance into insight, and from that insight, create something untouchable. Endurance that doesn't evolve becomes stagnation. A strong soul doesn't just carry weight, it knows when to set it down. And in that release, you find a new kind of strength, the strength to choose your own becoming. So now ask yourself, are you proud of your endurance, or are you ready to break it open and become truly strong? Drop it in the comments. The world needs fewer survivors and more creators. Illusion 2: control is not strength. It's often fear of collapse. You think you're strong because you're in control. You keep your emotions hidden, your image clean, your life organized. But Nietzsche saw this as another illusion. Because sometimes the need to control is not a sign of strength, it's a sign of terror. Terror of what would happen if you let go. Control is seductive. It gives the illusion of power. But beneath it often lies a deep mistrust of yourself, of life, of others. The need to control is the ego's response to chaos. But Nietzsche would say, chaos is where truth lives. When you obsess over structure, perfection, and outcomes, you're not being powerful, you're being rigid. And rigidity breaks. True strength is fluid. It can bend, it can adapt, it can fall apart and still return more alive than before. Control avoids vulnerability. And vulnerability, Nietzsche knew, is the entry point to authenticity. You can't become who you are while clinging to who you were. And you can't evolve if you're obsessed with maintaining the illusion that you've already arrived. Control also isolates you. It disconnects you from others because you're too busy managing your image to actually be seen. Too busy editing yourself to ever be felt. And in that performance, the real you slowly fade. Nietzsche believed that the human spirit thrives not in containment, but in confrontation. With fear. With loss. With the unknown. When you let go of control, not recklessly but courageously, you step into a deeper kind of power, one that isn't based on outcomes, but on presence. There's a kind of beauty that only emerges when things fall apart. When the mask slips, when the plan fails, that's when your essence has a chance to speak. Not as a role, but as a reality. And that's what Nietzsche was after, the raw truth. Control is easy. Chaos is terrifying. But only in chaos do you discover what doesn't break, what doesn't bend, what is truly you. So let go, not of discipline, but of domination. Let go of the lie that strength means never shaking. You don't have to manage your way into wholeness. You have to surrender to your own becoming. And that process will look nothing like the image of control you've worked so hard to protect. Strength is not found in perfection. It is born from falling and rebuilding again and again. Nietzsche knew, what survives the fire is real. So tell me, what are you still controlling that is actually controlling you? Illusion 3. Suppression is not strength. It's the death of the self. You've been told that strength means staying composed, that not showing emotion is a sign of control, that staying calm in chaos makes you powerful. But Nietzsche would look deeper and see something far more tragic, suppression masquerading as strength. Not discipline, not dignity, just silence soaked in fear. To suppress is to hide, to press down the parts of you that are too loud, too angry, too wild, too raw. You think you're in charge, but the truth is, you're terrified of what's inside you. So you seal it off, bury it, smile over it, but what you suppress doesn't disappear. It festers, it leaks, it shapes your life from the shadows. Nietzsche called it the will turned against itself, when your life force becomes your enemy because you've been taught to fear your own depth. You think you're strong because you don't feel. But feeling is not weakness, it's awareness. What you don't feel, you can't heal. What you can't heal, you will repeat. What you repeat, you will eventually become. Suppression is not mastery. It's self-abandonment. It's spiritual suffocation dressed as stoicism. And Nietzsche rejected it. He didn't want you to be polite. He wanted you to be real. And reality, lived fully, will never be clean, quiet, or convenient. There is more strength in a scream that comes from the soul than in 1,000 days of silence. There is more truth in a tear you let fall than in a mask you've worn for a lifetime. Nietzsche wasn't calling for chaos, he was calling for honesty. Because suppressed emotion becomes self-hatred, and self-hatred becomes obedience. You follow the rules not because they're true, but because you no longer trust yourself to break them. Strength is not about locking the fire away. It's about learning how to stand in it, without fear, without shame, without apology. You are not strong because you suppress. You are strong when you can express without collapsing. That means rage. That means grief. That means joy so big it terrifies the ones still hiding. This is not performance. This is alchemy. Turning emotion into truth. Pain into vision. Shadow into self. Let it rise. Let it speak. Let it destroy the version of you that thought silence was virtue. Because the real you, the free you, has something to say. So I ask you now, what truth inside you have you been calling too much, and when will you finally let it out? Illusion 4. Independence is not strength if it's built on isolation. You pride yourself on being independent, on needing no one, on solving your own problems. And yes, self-reliance has power. But Nietzsche would ask, what are you calling independence that is actually fear of connection? Sometimes what we call strength is just armor. We've been hurt, disappointed, betrayed. So we build walls and call them boundaries. We detach and call it dignity. We suffer alone and call it strength. But strength without vulnerability is not sovereignty, it's exile. Nietzsche didn't believe in the herd. But he also didn't believe in isolation. He believed in self-mastery, and true mastery means knowing when to stand alone and when to let someone in. Not to save you, but to witness you, to sharpen you, to reflect what you can't see alone. The isolated, strong person becomes a ghost. They live in control but die in silence. They never ask for help because they confuse asking with weakness. But what if asking is bravery? What if letting someone see you is the greatest risk and the greatest gift? You are not meant to walk this path in chains, but you're also not meant to walk it entirely alone. Power does not mean perfection. Sovereignty does not mean severance. The real strength is in choosing connection when everything in you screams to hide. Independence becomes a prison when it's built on pain. When it keeps people out not because you're whole, but because you're wounded. And Nietzsche wanted something more from you than survival. He wanted transformation. There is power in solitude, but it must be alive, not numb. It must be chosen, not inherited from trauma. You are not strong because you don't need anyone. You are strong when you choose who to let in with clarity and courage. So look at your independence. Is it freedom, or is it fear with a strong face? Is it self-respect or self-protection? Strength isn't about how well you hide. It's about how deeply you can be seen and remain true. The soul does not grow in isolation. It grows in relation to truth, to others, to itself. So tell me, where have you confused isolation with power? And what would it mean to open, just a little? Illusion 5. Self-denial is not strength. It's a disguise for guilt. You've been taught to call self-denial a virtue. To put others first. To sacrifice without question. To silence your desires and call it humility. But Nietzsche didn't see this as noble. He saw it as spiritual disguise. Not strength, but guilt made holy. In a world built on morality, the one who suffers most is praised most. The martyr becomes the model. And you were told that the less you ask for, the more worthy you become. But Nietzsche exposed this game for what it is. A way to tame the powerful by turning their instincts against them. You're not being strong when you suppress your hunger, your drive, your longing. You're being trained. Trained to betray your instincts. To moralize your surrender. To take your fire and bury it beneath the image of the good person. But your fire doesn't die. It just turns inward. And when your life force is denied long enough, it mutates into resentment, into guilt, into quiet rage. You look in the mirror and don't know what you've become, because it's not you. It's what was left after you silenced the truth for too long. Nietzsche believed that to be truly moral, you must first be free. And to be free, you must learn to say yes to yourself. Not just the polished parts, but the hunger, the ambition, the erotic, the wild. That's not sin. That's soul. Self-denial taught you to be ashamed of your nature. But your nature is not broken. It's buried. And digging it up isn't ego, it's awakening. You cannot be strong while lying to yourself about what you want, what you need, what you feel. This doesn't mean living in excess. Nietzsche didn't praise indulgence. He praised integration. The kind of strength that comes from facing your desires, understanding them, and choosing consciously how to channel them. True power comes when you no longer moralize your hunger. When you no longer shrink your needs to fit someone else's comfort. When you can look at the fire inside you and say, I will not apologize for being alive. Strength is not suppression. Strength is knowing your depths so intimately that you are no longer ruled by them, but neither are you ashamed. You act not from guilt but from grounded desire, from clarity, from alignment. The world will still try to praise your denial. Don't accept it. Let your strength come not from what you refuse to feel, but from your capacity to hold all of it and remain whole. So I ask you, what part of you have you denied in the name of virtue, and are you ready to reclaim it? Illusion 6. The mask of strength. Why you don't know who you are. We all wear masks. Nietzsche knew that. But his most brutal insight was this. The longer you wear the mask of strength, the more you forget there's a face underneath. You don't just hide from others, you start hiding from yourself. You call yourself strong because you perform it well. You show up. You take care of things. You don't complain. But somewhere along the way, the performance became the person. And now you don't know where the mask ends and you begin. This illusion is subtle. It feels like confidence, like leadership, like reliability. But it's often built on fear. Fear that if you stopped being the strong one, no one would know what to do with you. That if you took off the mask, they'd leave, or worse, they'd see you. Nietzsche didn't want you to be seen. He wanted you to see yourself. Raw, broken, wild, sacred. Not polished into perfection, but shattered into truth. Because the only strength worth anything is the kind that survives self-confrontation. Your real self isn't the version that keeps it all together. Your real self is the one who falls apart, and then rebuilds from truth instead of fear. The one who says, I've lied to myself long enough. I want to live real. This is the turning point. The moment when your reflection feels like a stranger. When your achievements feel hollow. When your smile feels scripted. That's not a crisis. That's an invitation. Nietzsche would call it the moment the mask begins to melt. And what's underneath is messy, uncertain, but alive. And it's only in that raw state that transformation becomes possible. You can't evolve if you're pretending. You can't become if you're hiding. Real strength is knowing the difference between the image and the essence, between the role and the reality, and having the courage to choose essence, even when the world prefers your role. So if you're exhausted, maybe it's not because you're weak. Maybe it's because you've been playing strong for so long you've forgotten how to just be. Let the mask fall. Let the truth rise. Let the world adjust to who you really are or not. But you will finally feel free. Now tell me, what mask of strength are you ready to drop? Illusion 7. Strength is not what you show, it's what you survive and transcend. What if the strongest version of you is the one no one ever sees? The part of you that shattered at midnight and still stood up at dawn. The one that felt worthless, lost, abandoned, and still chose to keep going. Nietzsche would say, that's not weakness. That's the seed of your power. True strength isn't glamorous. It doesn't post well. It doesn't win applause. It's quiet, hidden, forged in solitude. It's not found in the victory. It's found in the decision to not give up before the breakthrough arrives. We've been taught that strength is what you project. Confidence, posture, control. But Nietzsche saw through the theater. He knew that real power comes from what you overcome internally, not what you manage to appear like externally. The modern illusion of strength is aesthetic. It's about the performance of resilience. But Nietzsche's strength is existential. It's the ability to remain whole while everything around and within you falls apart. You become strong not by avoiding suffering, but by using it. By transforming your grief into wisdom, your failure into fuel, your emptiness into expression. That's not romantic. That's revolutionary. And this is where the journey ends, or truly begins. Not in being the strongest in the room, but in being the one who became themselves when they had every reason to disappear. This strength cannot be taught. It must be earned. In darkness, in silence, in the private war between who you were told to be and who you are becoming. Nietzsche would not care about your image. He would care about your becoming. Did you face the abyss? Did you rise without promises? Did you create meaning where others only saw void? If so, then you are strong. Not because the world says so, but because you know what it costs to still be here. So shed the illusion. Strength is not what you show. It's what you live through. It's not how loud you are. It's how real you can become, even in the quietest moment. So I ask you, what have you survived that no one sees? And what are you ready to become, now that the illusion has cracked? Leave it in the comments. Let your strength speak. Conclusion: you've reached the end. Now begin again, as yourself. You've walked through fire. Not once, but 7 times. Through obedience. Through morality. Through suffering. Through chaos. Through emptiness. Through silence. And now, through the final illusion. The idea that you were ever truly strong just by pretending to be. Nietzsche never wanted followers. He wanted awakened creators. Individuals brave enough to destroy the old world within themselves, and build something terrifyingly real in its place. If you've felt your beliefs crumble, your masks melt, your meaning collapse, then congratulations. You're becoming free. This may be the end of the series, but it is only the beginning of your becoming. No more gods to worship. No more roles to hide behind. No more lies to carry like sacred truth. Now it's just you, raw, alive, uncertain, and powerful in a way that no one can take. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this series with someone who's ready to stop surviving and start becoming.